Okay, let's go for it.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to begin in a few moments. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to begin in a few moments. Oh, I was muted there. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and add the country and organization that you're joining us from in the chat so we can get to see where everyone is joining us from. Our team is from all over the place today, so I'm looking forward to introducing them to you. My name is Susan Melnick, and I am the ASAP Communications and Graphics Specialist here with the ASAP program, which is a USAID Pepfar funded program. So we're going to wait just another minute or two to get started and let our other attendees join us. So feel free to add your country and local organization into the chat. Wonderful. It's great to see everyone today. We have people from all over: Malawi, Zambia, Nigeria, South Africa. Wonderful. That's great. So as we let people start to join us today, I'm going to go ahead and get started with just a couple of introductory notes. So welcome to today's webinar. This is an ASAP webinar, which is accelerating support to advance local partners. And we are a USAID Pepfar funded program. And today's webinar is Human Resources, Policies, and Procedures. And we have a wonderful team here today who's going to be presenting. And I'd love to tell you a little bit more about them in a moment. Next slide, please, be great. So just a few quick notes. If you wouldn't mind going ahead and telling us where you're from in the chat, you can put the country and the organization that you're joining us from. We have a little plan here with our Q&A box. We like to try and keep our questions to the Q&A box, which you'll see as a separate button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to use the chat throughout the webinar to have discussions and talk to other attendees as well as the panelists. But if you have a specific question, we really request that you use that Q&A box. It allows us to organize the questions and keep things flowing. Today's question period will be at the very end of the webinar. So we're going to make sure we can get through all of the presentations because we have 3 great ones today. So hold tight and ask your questions throughout the webinar and we'll address them at the very end. We have one poll today. It'll pop up about 15 minutes before the end of the presentation today. And it's just a general poll to give us some ideas of future webinars and how you enjoyed this one. And as usual, the presentation for today's webinar will be saved on the ASAP website. I'll be sure to share that link in the chat in a couple of minutes. We have done to date, next slide, please, speaker, quite a number of webinars, I think. So today, I think today is our 70th. So we've actually broadcasted 69 up until today. And we've had over 14,000 attendees. And we're really, really thankful to be able to put these on. And we thank USAID and Pepfar for making it possible. And again, many of these webinars are available online. So you can go back and rewatch them or watch them for the first time at any point in time. And feel free to share with colleagues. We have information on financial management, obviously HR, communications, business development, and a myriad of other topics. Next slide, please. And many of our webinars come in 3 languages. So obviously today's webinar is held in English. We also do webinars in French and Portuguese. And on the website, you can actually filter by language. So you can find the webinars that are in the language of your choice. Next slide, please. And many of our presentations also include the presentation slides. So on the website that I'm going to share with you in a couple of minutes, you'll be able to find many of these recordings as well as the actual presentation so that you can read through them a little more thoroughly. Next slide, please. All right, and we have a couple of upcoming webinars. So on March 2nd, we're doing a communications webinar called Telling Your Project Story. We're going to go over how to utilize success stories, photography, getting quotes from your beneficiaries to share with donors and reports, as well as your community. On March 9th, we have USAID financial policies, internal controls, and compliance. And on March 16th, we have optimizing gender in the workplace. And we do have webinars every week, so we'll continue to post them on our website, and I'll be sure to share that link with you in a few moments, and you'll be able to register for the upcoming webinars. Next slide, please. All right, this is my favorite part. So I get to introduce you to today's presenters. We have a fabulous team with us today. So Simon Mbugwa is joining us. He's our ASAP Capacity Advisor for Human Resources. And we have Nikatha Nanjiro, who is the coordinator for HAP in Kenya, and Eno Obong Edege, who is our HR manager for the USAID call center. So they're going to be speaking in this order, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Simon now. All yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Susan, and good morning and good afternoon and good evening to all the participants, and welcome to this seminar. It's a delight to do a HR webinar after a long time. Just maybe as we move on, I would like to, maybe by a show of hands, let us know who amongst you is responsible for human resources in your organizations, either directly or leading the Human Resources Office. Because today we'll be talking about institutionalizing good human resources practices in our organization. So by a show of hands, let's see how many of us are managing that process. So the next slide. As the hands are coming in, maybe just to let you know a little bit about ASAP and what we've been doing. I am one of the capacity advisors for ASAP in the area of human resources. We have 51 other local capacity advisors, various different areas, local organizations across the world, and we've done 45 NGO risk assessment, or what we were using the NUPAS Plus, the NUPAS and the NUPAS Plus tools. And for those who may not be familiar with NUPAS Plus, the NUPAS Plus is a non-US organization pre-award survey and guidelines and support, which is done before USAID gives grants to local organizations. And we have done 6 assessments from for government to government support. Thank you. Let's move on. In the kind of support we've provided, we have seen some organizations co-funded in the 6 organizations, Tanzania, Mozambique, Cote d'Ivoire, Namibia, Lesotho, and Nigeria. And we still have other countries where there is ongoing buy-ins and organizations getting supported so that they can access the funding. Let's proceed. From the assessments that we have done as ASAP and the interaction with the local organizations, we have observed that there are very many organizations without comprehensive human resources policies and documentations and tools for various HR procedures. In some cases, even with organizations with quite a number of staff, we have seen that there are organizations who do not have any human resources staff on board. Of course, when you don't have comprehensive policies and when you don't have a professional on board, there are various challenges and risks that the organizations may get into. And one of them could be that the organization may have challenges in attracting and retaining key staff members, either due to low salaries or either due to poor human resources practices, and people may feel disengaged with the organization and they may move on. There are many other gaps relating to compliance, either to the local laws of those countries or to various donor regulations if those items are not well streamlined. So our approach has been in that in consultation with each of the LIPs or the local organizations that we are working with, once an assessment is done and those gaps have been identified, we develop a capacity development plan to address those gaps. And that's where in areas of human resources, it could be in area of program management, it could be in finance, but in this particular case, we'll be talking about some of the areas that we have been able to support organizations and some of the key areas that human resources office should fix. Let's move on. So majority of organizations we hear say that they have challenges in attracting and keeping staff, and or keeping staff engaged, or having people who are motivated working for them, or even ensuring that once you have put out advertisements, you get quality respondents. So what is the problem? Or what can we do to improve the level of our staff engagement within our organizations? Some of the rules of the thumb, or the basics that we need to do is to treat staff fairly, with respect, and equitably. Of course, those are they are easy said than done, because sometimes there could be vested interest, there could be pressure from particular quarters, there could be lack of skills for some of the human resource people who are managing people, either as managers and supervisors. So we need to find ways in which we can ensure that people are being treated fairly, with respect, and equitably. The other intervention is to be transparent. And one of the ways to be transparent is ensuring that all the procedures, all the rules, or all the actions within the organizations are documented, and so that when you treat somebody, you are kind to one person. If you are unkind to another, people would get to know and have ways to air their complaints. It's also good to offer fair compensation and developing opportunities for staff, either to learn new skills or to grow their career within the organizations, and recognizing them when they have done a good job. Every one of us feels good when they have been recognized, and when they have been listened by management. So at whatever level you are at in your organization, if you are man, so that you get to understand and hear the concerns of the people that we manage. Next slide, please. So how do you do all these great things? Sometimes as leadership or as managers in our organizations, or even if we are not managers, as even a staff, what can we ask our organizations to do? The best way to entrench and standardize practices, these good practices, is through having a comprehensive human resources policy document. In some countries, they call it a staff handbook. In some other places, they call it HR policies, then manual. So that once we have been able to identify the practices that we want these organizations, the organizations that we serve, to be doing, we should document them so that even when one good manager leaves, someone else who doesn't understand these things is able to read and understand the reasons and the best practices to engage in. The other thing that we all need to get to do is to keep or to preach or to practice what we preach. Of course, the documents that we have as human resources manuals or staff handbooks, that's what we probably would call the Bible. And so we as practitioners, either in whatever area, whether in leadership or as managers of people, we should practice what the document says. But of course, it's also important to keep on listening to the staff concerns. So we need to have ways in which we get to understand what are staff comments. Some of them we cannot be able to document everything that is happening within the organization. All can happen. So you need to keep your ears on the ground to get to understand what are staff concerns and move along with the market, because the market is changing. And work practices are changing, and individuals and different generations that are coming to the world of work are demanding different things from the ones that the generations before. So we should keep ourselves abreast with with the market trends, so that we know what is happening. So those are some of the reasons. Let's move on. Next slide, please. So I'm going to spend a few slides or show a few slides demonstrating some of the key clauses that are very important to keep in our HR policy manuals. From whatever country you come from whichever organization, these are some of the best practices that we have seen that work, and some of the key things that are important to have in our documents. First of all is to have whatever policy document we develop, or whatever policy that we come up with, we should always check whether we are in compliance with the local labor laws. Each country, a majority of the countries that I've been to, I have never had a country where there are no labor laws. So all the time, make sure that by bare minimum, you are compliant with the labor laws. Because if you are not, it can be very expensive. You can get into litigations, and it can be very expensive in terms of damages, or even having authorities coming after the organization. There is always good, the next point that you should have is to have the vision and the mission statements of the organizations included in the document. Why is this important? Vision and mission statements are the guidelines and the dream to which employees' actions should all be geared to, and therefore it is important to have this and so that employees get to understand and to know the mission and vision of the organizations they work for. You may find we found many organizations that do not have these statements, or staff are not even aware of what is the vision of their organizations, or where the organization is moving to, and therefore that may be a disconnect between the organization dreams and what the staff are doing. Organizational values. It is important that each and every organization identify at least could be 5, could be 3 Some organizations go up, even up to 10. Key values that they would like the behavior of the organization or the rest of the world to view that organization from those values. And it is also the values drive culture, and therefore whatever culture you would love to have entrenched within the organization, that can be best captured within values. And occasionally we will find that some of them drive performance, and you may see that there's particular values that might form part of the key performance indicators in each organization. The staffing philosophy, that is very important, and we have a majority of organizations would say we have an open door. We do not discriminate under any anyone, either through gender, religion, and so on. So those are the philosophy that may guide the organization. And general statements of how frequent the policies may be reviewed. In some organizations, they will say that they will be either reviewed or amended after 2 years, 1 year. So it is always good to have that statement so that it can become a reminder that this is a living document. It needs to keep on moving with the times. All the time, it is always good to have a page where staff acknowledge that they have read and understood these policies, so that in case there are legal issues when things do not work well, you can always, the organization will always have a fallback that their staff or the employees are well aware, they have read and have acknowledged that they have read the policies of the organizations, and therefore we are not, the staff are not ignorant of the policies. Next slide, please. So some of the other policies that are important to include in the manual. One of them is on recruitment, and recruitment and hiring procedures are some of the places where majority of organizations struggle with. Either the process is not transparent, or the managers are not objective, and or they do not have an idea, maybe out of ignorance or out of lack of knowledge. They have no idea on how to do a good recruitment or carry out interviews. So a comprehensive process can be developed from time of job identification all the way to advertising, recruiting, interviewing, job offer. You can document all those processes so that anybody new, they'll come and learn what needs to be done. Reference checks are very important, and some checks, some check is a system for award management, which is a USID system. Those are very important. Should USID come and do maybe a HR audit or an audit of the organization, and they find that those are some of the gaps within the organization, then we may find that the organization's in a very difficult situation, explaining whether the staff they have are credible or the process of recruitment was comprehensive. Of course, onboarding process is very important, and we hear that majority of people who live within the first 1 year of appointment is because that the onboarding process was not okay. So we have supported organizations to come up with a comprehensive 3 months onboarding process, from the first day to the last day, to maybe at the first 90 days. Recruitment it also include how to draft contracts and ensuring that every staff file has contract or an employment agreement. It has a job description. The recruitment documents are in place so that there are records of how somebody was hired. that each and every staff file has a resume or a CV, and the other documents that each and every country requires that be kept by employers. It is always important to have a checklist so that you can see that all those documents are in place. One of the things I can mention as we move to the next slide is that it will cost you more to replace top talent than it would cost you to keep them. So you always need to pay people very well so that you do not get into recruitment costs all the time. So one of the other things that we support organizations, or we have supported organizations, is to ensure that they have they're hiring the right people. If when people leave, that is very disruptive even to the projects and to the work environment. It is time consuming. So we have assisted, or it is important that you get a checklist to ensure that you tick all those important processes, so that you can make sure that you are hiring right at the first time all the time. So this includes recruitment planning, interviewing skills, reference checking, and salary history checks. Next slide, please. So the other clause within our human resources staff handbook is terms and conditions of employment, and they are very many, and it's always good to highlight the key ones, like place of work, hours of work, performance appraisal, because that is very key. Whether we need to keep on recording of our time, this is timesheets. If an organization have flexible work schedules, you need to have a policy that guides that, so that we do not have gaps. We know with COVID and working from home or what we call telecommuting has become very popular, or has become inevitable. So we need to have policies so that these areas are not vague, but are well known to staff, and it's also very helpful to managers, so that they can be able to manage their staff without being seen to be unfair or fair to particular individuals. Next slide, please. Compensation and benefits. It's always good to have all these things clear in the policies and then in our procedures. What is our compensation philosophy? Compensation philosophy is a statement that states whether the organization wants to be a market leader, whether you want to be paying on average of the market, or sometimes whether you want to be following the market. And all these are majority of the times dictated by maybe the level of funding or the size of the organization. And therefore, it is good to have a compensation philosophy, so that even when you are trying to explain why the organization is paying differently from other organizations, you may have a basis for that. So it's always good to ensure that we have a basic pay, and this is the basic pay is what probably we will all the time be checking against the market to see how we are paying. Of course, and the allowances. Allowances, again, could be many, and some of them are statutory, depending on which country you're living in, and others are just good to do, so that the employees can remain engaged and engaged to the organization, but also their basic needs are met. Of course, there are non-cash benefits, and these include the kind of leaves that the organization may have, from annual leave, vacation, maternity, study leave. There could be a myriad of leaves that the organization can have, and therefore it is important that these are documented, so that it is not guesswork. Staff are aware, and the administration of leave is seen to be transparent, and not objective. So it could be pension plans, medical insurance, and any other benefits that organizations provide. To remain competitive, it is always good practice to have an eye on the market. And every 2 years, if you can do a salary and benefit survey, it is very important so that you can be able to upgrade and update your salary scales or your benefits so that you do not lose talent to competition or to other organizations because you are lagging behind the market. Next slide. Performance management. We know that majority of organizations do have performance management systems, but we have come across organizations that have challenges in implementing performance management, and therefore it is good practice to have a strategy on how to manage performance, and largely is to have an annual appraisal system. Some organizations do have semi-annual and others quarterly performance appraisals, depending on the level of maybe number of staff or preference in terms of strategy. So having processes and skills and tools to do staff appraisals are important, and there are very many different ways of or tools that we have these days. We have, for example, the 360-degree appraisal system, where it's not only the supervisor who provides feedback, but colleagues and maybe other subordinates also can provide feedback on performance. We can have the balanced scorecard, which is also a different method of tracking performance, and management by objectives. All these are different methods, and the organization would choose which strategy fits them. Of course, sometimes there are instances where there is poor performance, and it's good always to have a system or a process of identifying poor performance and a system of helping staff improve performance. So performance improvement plans should be part of the policies and good practices, so that even when you may be asking staff to go for poor performance, the organization will have been seen to have been fair and to have done everything to help that staff member improve on their performance. It's always good to link performance management with training, with training or staff development, and that staff performance or the appraisal can be a good opportunity to carry out a training needs assessment, which can help the organization develop a training plan for the year for the entire organization. Next slide. Talking of learning and development, it is always, again, important to have a documented process in terms of how training or how the organization is going to develop individual skills, their attitude, their abilities, and knowledge in the work that they do, so that they can be better. Jobs are always changing. Skills that we had yesterday become obsolete because of either change of technology or change in terms of the organization projects that are coming on board, or they are venturing into new areas. So we should always develop our own staff, not all the time hiring from out. So training can also assist staff achieve their individual career goals. And so establishing processes of how to identify training needs and linking performance, like I said before, into training and development is very important. Richard Branson, I hope we all know Richard Branson, I think the president of the Virgin Group of companies, said that we should always train people very well enough so that they they can leave the organization. However, we should treat them even better so that they do not want to leave organizations. I've had instances where managers do not want to train or to add more skills to individuals, so to ensure that they do not leave the organization. They may become too marketable in the marketplace. However, if you can train them and treat them very well, you will enjoy for a longest time their new skills. Next slide. Career pathing. Career pathing is another area that we should embrace as one of the human resources best practices. And career pathing, we are trying to align individuals' growth within the organizations in the organizations into the areas in which they would prefer or they would love to grow in. So employees are more engaged when their employer is concerned about their career growth. Employees can also achieve their career goals while fulfilling the company's or the organization's mission or the projects that they are implementing. So our role in HR is to create career paths or mechanisms to enhance employees' skills and knowledge so that they can lead to higher positions within the organization, either through promotions or transfers, or even taking up leadership roles within the organization. This always improves staff morale, career satisfaction, and motivation, and of course the productivity within the organization is assured. Next slide. Code of conduct. Code of conduct is one of the other important clauses that guide good work ethics and good HR practices. And the code of conduct has the usual do's and don'ts. And some of them, some of the various sub clauses within this area would be the code of ethics, and code of ethics define what is acceptable within the organization and what is not acceptable, and that could also be in line with probably what your donor is considers acceptable and what is not acceptable. They could be the confidentiality and declaration of confidentiality forms that we should ask our staff to complete, the conflict of interest, declaration forms, anti-fraud policies, whistleblower, fraud awareness initiatives. How do we report fraud? How do we investigate fraud? Matters about sexual harassment and anti-harassment at workplace, and anti-bullying or anti-violence in the workplace, and general gross misconduct within the organization. Majority of times, this is where we have issues relating to indiscipline or matters that make organizations send people home for misconduct. So these are areas that we need to have them clearly documented and explained to staff so that the people can know where the boundaries are and when things go wrong, how to report them. Next slide. Inevitably, sometimes we have to separate with staff. Either staff have chosen to leave the organization, or sometimes the projects that we are working in come to a close, or there is either reduction in work, or you have to stop people from working either because of misconduct. It's always good to have it documented on various possible ways in which people can separate from the organization and how the organization will respond when any one of those happens. Either it is staff being incapacitated, either due to medical health, whether staff dies in service. You should have a checklist or a flow chart of what should happen, so that we manage this process as well as we manage the recruitment, so people do not go home with bad taste in their mouth. So let's have a fair process. Let's be prepared, and let's all these things do not take us by surprise. So we should always have an exit interview. An exit interview is very important because it provides us information from staff who probably would not have said some things before. They now have the courage to tell you where the shoe pinches, what did not work well, what can be improved to make the organization better, or what can be done better to make the next person who is joining the organization become a better worker. Next slide. So even when we are talking about separation, we should also have a grievance procedure for the staff who are around. One of the best ways to do that is to have an open door policy, so that people can actually be able to openly air their grievances, so that they can be able to either reach the HR office, able to reach their supervisors or the managers or the top leadership without feeling very restrained. So all the time, let us aim to have a formal, informal resolution of staff issues at either staff themselves or between the staff and their managers before that engaging into a very formal process of either writing letters or documenting some of these things. So, but inevitably, sometimes managers may be unable to handle these issues, or the managers themselves may be the problem. So there must be a way to escalate these issues upward, so that management or NHR gets to know them. So we could have a process through which the manager or the departmental head is informed. The matter then moves to HR, and if HR is not able to, the matter goes to top management or the leadership of the organization. Next slide. When indiscipline happens, because it will happen, sometimes depending on the level of indiscipline, oral reprimand is enough, and this could be done but at manager level, where oral reprimand has not resolved issues, and that there is a repeated misconduct, then written reprimands are important. And you could have, depending on what the labor laws in your countries provide for, you could have several levels of warnings, say the first warning, second warning, and final. Again, depending on what the gravity of the misconduct, you could actually do, there could be gross misconducts that do not require warning, and therefore the staff member needs to separate immediately. There could be room for suspension as the investigations happens, and all this should be documented. How long should the suspension be? Is it suspensions with pay or without pay? Is it suspension with half pay? Depending on what is the practice in the country that you live in. Separation for cause, or what in some countries we call summary dismissal. We should have all this documented, so that should anything staff either go out and litigate, we have everything documented, and process that we used is identifiable, and it is seen to have been fair. In that way, the organization will not be in a lot of litigation. So the process of handling discipline is as important as the outcome. The process is important as the outcome. Documentation is key. Let's all the time remember that. If it has not been documented, it never happened. So let's move to the next slide. Lastly, the health and safety. We are living in times where we have seen a lot of health-related issues that have made the world come to a standstill. But still, we are working in areas where there could be hazards because of the way the work we are doing, or in the environment in which we are working. So injury on the job is an employer's liability. So you need to, as an organization, take a decision how you're going to mitigate that risk, whether you're going to take an insurance cover, medical insurance. In some countries, this is mandatory. In some other countries, this is part of Social Security. Again, it is good practice to make sure that people have a minimum health and medical matters covered, so that you do not lose a lot of idle time when people are unwell. It's a good practice, and it's as good as a duty of care of a good employer. Let's have wellness programs that we are running as human resources, and much of it should be depending on where you are, what may be on the common illnesses that people are getting, or some of the wellness challenges that the people in the populace are getting. But globally, we know mental health is becoming a challenge to in most populations, and so we should have mental health and wellness initiatives, country counseling services that are being provided, or provisions of how those can be provided, how to encourage people to get out of drugs and other habits that are detrimental to health, and ensuring that there is either anti-smoking or anti whatever that is ailing the population, making sure that those things do not happen at workplace. So thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this part of the presentation, and I am going to invite my co-presenters, who are representative of some of the organizations that ASAP has been working with, and who we have helped revamp their HR piece and address some of the gaps that we found. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, kindly jot them down.
Thank you, Simon, for taking us through that session. My name's Qa Transcript. I am the coordinator at ACHAP. Next slide. So ACHAP, the Africa Christian Health Associations platform, is a regional faith-based organization that provides a platform to Christian health associations and other church networks in sub-Saharan Africa. We are headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, and we have membership in many African countries, more than 30 countries, 43 members. I have seen some of them, like the Christian Health Association of Nigeria, on the call. Next slide. So the objectives of ACHAP include facilitating networking and communication for our members. We also facilitate joint advocacy, support the capacity development for our members to provide quality healthcare, as well as establishing and maintaining partnerships on their behalf. Next slide. So I've said a bit of this, but our membership is open to Christian health associations, which, to just explain a bit, are at national level are organized as mission health facilities and programs in different countries. So the Christian Health Association at the national level then becomes our member. We also have some faith-based drug supply organizations in some countries that are organized by the Christian Health Association or mission hospitals in specific countries have come together to have a drug supply organization that is able to take care of the needs of the mission hospitals. And I just said that we have membership in more than 32 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Next. So just to provide a background to my presentation, in 2019, the USAID launched the new Partners Initiative, whose aim was to, as part of its diversification of the partner base, where previously being able to access USAID funding, you had to be a very established organization. But the new Partners Initiative provided an avenue for new, local, and less experienced organizations to be able to engage with USAID. By doing that, then USAID was able to lower the barriers to accessing funding by local, new, and organizations that had not previously received funding from USAID. HAP happens to be one of those, and we applied for funding from USAID under this initiative. And we were selected to work on a community maternal and child health project in Kenya and Uganda with our members, the Christian Health Association of Kenya and the Uganda Catholic Medical Mission Board. On this grant, our goal is to work with communities on decreasing maternal and child mortality and morbidity by working together on community factors that affect maternal and child health mortality and morbidity. When we came on board, definitely, as I have described the new Partners Initiative, it meant that when we had the assessment that Simon has just talked about, the new pass for new partners, then non-US partners, then there were certain gaps in our systems that needed to be worked on for us to have systems that are strong enough to be able to receive and manage funding. And therefore, ASAP came on board to strengthen HAP's systems to directly manage and implement the USAID funding. And I have to say that that relationship was very important to us because by it, we were able to strengthen HR systems to in specific places, such as being able to design job designing and analysis to ensure that we got the right mix and experience and qualified staff to support the project that we were just starting to do, that we were able to go through recruitment and selection, that we were also able to do performance management for our staff, that we were able to have policies that would support our project and the organization as a whole, and then that we were also able to have the needed HR tools. Next slide. So specifically for the job design and analysis and job descriptions, the support that we received from ASAP included support to evaluate positions. So as a background, HAP is a secretariat based in Nairobi that supports our members based all over sub-Saharan Africa. However, by starting to engage with USAID, definitely this became one of our big projects that meant that we needed to increase our capacity. And therefore, we needed to ensure that whatever skill mix that was identified would be able to match the project that we were running. So with the support of ASAP, who had HR advisors and experts that had experience and knowledge, we were able to do a proper job evaluation, look at our work plan, and be able to identify the correct mix of skills, qualifications, and experience that we would need to be able to run the new project. We were also able to work together with them to formulate the JDs for these positions, as well as work to, because some of these positions previously did not exist on our structure, be able to do a proper strategy that would help us have a competitive package for the staff that we would bring on board. Next slide. In terms of recruitment, selection, and onboarding, with the support of the ASAP experts, we were able to work on advertisements, work on the interview processes, as well as support the onboarding and the onboarding process. This included the position of, previously the secretariat was quite small, but with this new project, part of what came on board was a HR manager position. So that was one of the positions that we needed to have as a beginning to this project. So next. HAP had HR policies and procedures. However, to be in compliance with donor and local labor laws, and also because we were going to onboard people from different countries in different countries, we also needed to ensure that our policies were in line, and also to ensure that we included components that I will not go into details of, because I think Simon has alluded to this. We needed to ensure that our policies were quite comprehensive. So we looked at our policies and we got advice on areas that were not comprehensive. One of the big ones was our project started in the middle of COVID. That meant that we had to start thinking about new ways of working. And part of the things that we had to think about in our policies was the virtual workplace, and how to ensure that we did the right things and were able to engage staff to do to be engaged to be engaged with us during the COVID-19. Next slide. In terms of performance management, we developed tools. We also worked with ASAP. They supported the sensitization of the performance management process, supported us to be able to talk to staff to understand the performance management process that we were putting in place, as well as helped us in the process of getting the staff to do their performance management, the performance appraisal targets, plans, as well as advise accordingly based on what we had on our work plans and other plans for the year. Next. ASAP also supported us in the development of various HR tools. Some of these included the timesheets. As you may know, working with USAID, you require to have timesheets that have to be of certain standards to be able to report effort. We also needed to do the appraisal tools, like I have said in my previous slide. And we also needed to ensure that we had a payroll management system that was going to help us manage our new staffing complement. Of course, the policy manuals, as well as governance tools that were going to help us work with the board on HR issues. Next step, next slide. Okay, so thank you. So basically, those are the many things that we were able to do with ASAP, and I think for us, it helped us move in many ways from where we were as an organization in terms of our capacity in human resources management to where we are right now. And I think we were able to accomplish the objectives that were set forth by USAID bringing on board ASAP to help us strengthen the human resources capacity of the organization. And as is at the moment, we can confidently do a new NUPAS and pass the NUPAS and be able to apply for funding as an organization that has had experience with USAID and that has systems that are strong. So thank you for listening to me. I would appreciate questions, comments, and we will, on the Q&A, we will answer them as we go on, as well as answer them at the end. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. I would like to thank you for participating today. My name is Enobong Edege, and I am the Human Resources Manager and Gender Focal Person for USAID Care Center in Nigeria. During the next 20 minutes, I'll be sharing some of the HR tools provided by ASAP and how we as an organization have successfully implemented some of these policies. Next slide, please. Okay, on my agenda for the presentation, we'll be looking at the following items, such as the center overview. That is what we do here at USAID Care Center, NUPAS assessments, HR tools provided by ASAP, and how these tools and policies are being implemented. Next slide, please. The USAID Care Center provides a range of HIV-related services, such as PrEP, PEP, HTS, which is HIV testing services, to clients, as well as providing virtual first-line support to survivors of gender-based violence. And we link these clients to 17 USAID-supported facilities here in Nigeria. Next slide. With the help of ASAP, Simon, a CDP, which is a capacity development plan, was developed to ensure that USAID call center conforms to human resources best practices following a NUPAS evaluation. Like Simon earlier mentioned, NUPAS is a non-US government pre-award survey, which was conducted in June 2020. As a result of this NUPAS assessment, gaps were identified, gaps in our human resources manual, travel policy, salary scale, SAM check for new employees, and semi-annual performance appraisal processes. And I'll discuss how we have addressed these gaps effectively as we proceed. Next slide, please. Okay, here we have some of the HR tools provided by ASAP. We have a review of our human resources policy manual document, a performance appraisal tool, institutionalization of SAM check, modification of job description, fixed term contract, which is our employment letter, our code of conduct, sexual harassment policy, a leave management system, and of course, yeah, we conducted a salary survey. Next slide, please. Okay, first, we'll be looking at our performance appraisal tool. In September 2021, last year, with the help of Simon from ASAP, we adopted the 360 appraisal technique, wherein 3 reviewers are to provide performance feedback to have a holistic, a well-rounded view of the employee's performance and developmental needs in the year under review. The 3 reviewers are a supervisor, a peer, and a subordinate. Why did we choose, or why did we adopt this 360 appraisal technique? One, because it presents a comprehensive picture of each employee by taking different points of view into account. Secondly, we chose it because it enhances communication and motivation by involving employees at all organizational levels, like I earlier said, a superior, a peer, and a subordinate in the appraisal processes. Finally, it brings out the training needs and requirements of the employee. After Simon suggested the 360 appraisal technique, a step-down training was conducted with all departmental heads on how to go about with this technique. And in order to attain and maintain a high level of job performance and career growth at USAID call center, we plan to deploy the same in March 2022, which is next month. Next slide, please. SAMcheck. SAMcheck is a term that most of us are familiar with. SAMcheck, which is the system for award management, is a background check portal that helps organizations such as ours search if anyone in their employees or dealings with has had any infractions in any place before now. And at USAID call center, this SAMcheck has successfully been implemented for new and existing employees, not just employees. We also carry out SAMcheck for vendors, contractors, and as we move forward, we'll continue to do that. Next slide, please. Modification of job descriptions. So to stay competitive in the market, all job descriptions were revised to reflect relevant tasks and activities as well as salary grades, just like you're seeing on this slide. Next, please. Letter of employment. Before Simon came on board, the letter of employment here at the call center reflected only the total salary, but as a result of the review, components such as basic pay, housing allowances, transportation are reflected now. Then we have mandatory deductions such as pay, pension, reflecting as well. And these components, which derives from the Nigerian labor law, are reflected in percentages. Next slide, please. Code of conduct. As we all know, the code of conduct defines an organizational norm, standard, and ethical expectation for employees. For example, employees during orientation are given an employee handbook that clearly explains criteria for acceptable conduct of employees in the organization. And these policies and guidelines are also conveyed and explained verbally to them. All these policies listed here, such as conflict of interests, self-declaration form, non-disclosure agreement, all of these are under the Code of Conduct article. Next slide, please. Sexual harassment. All sexual harassment allegations are considered very serious and treated with utmost respect and confidentiality. Because here at UCS Care Center, we take complaints of discrimination and harassment very seriously. There's no need for an employee to follow any formal chain of command when filing a complaint. And an employee may bypass anyone in his or her direct chain of command and file his or her complaint or discuss this concern with the executive director or designate at any time. And the executive director will investigate the complaint immediately. Next slide, please. Leave management system. With the support of ASAP, a standard leave management system was established. The leave package at the call center includes annual leave, paternity and maternity leave, sick leave, compassionate leave, casual leave, study leave, and leave without pay. So when an employee is absent for 3 consecutive days without reasonable cause, And we as an organization have made unsuccessful attempts to contact his or her next of kin, but not limited to phone calls or SMS. The employee is considered to have absconded. The organization policy was reviewed to reflect the consequences of such unauthorized leave and is currently in use. Next slide, please. Salary survey. I received assistance with a salary survey, which was conducted in order to compare our salaries to those of other USAID-funded NGOs in Nigeria, and this survey was carried out last year, 2021. Data from other sectors were collected, analyzed, and the current inflation rate was factored in as well. Next slide, please. Several other policies were implemented and reviewed to be in compliance with the global HR best practices. Policies such as headhunting policy, volunteer workers policy, HIV and AIDS at workplace policies. All of these policies and many more are not listed here were introduced by Simon to the organization to be in line, like I said, with the global HR best practices. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you so much, and I hope my presentation was clear enough. I'll take questions now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, for the presentation and Katha. And first of all, before I take any other questions, I'll just maybe respond to some of the questions that have been coming up on the wall. And I know we've been trying to respond to some on the wall, but maybe for the benefit of others, we can mention. There was a question on how flexible is USAID to fund salary survey, and then let the findings and to inform our own salary scales. Unless of course the process was in the budget, there could be challenges, but also including the process in itself in the budget can actually steep the budget depending on how you want to carry out the survey. But my recommendation is there are some surveys that have been done by other organizations that you can either subscribe to or you can actually buy. In our world of NGOs, there is a group called Batches Group, and I think with about 800 to $1,000 US, you can actually be getting these surveys on quarterly basis. So that I doubt whether that would be a big budget item for USAID to say no. However, if you're going to commission your own salary survey, it might cost you. It's really expensive since you may have to hire external consultants and so on. So you can look for other approaches to carry out or to get the market data. Somebody asked, what is the difference between orientation, induction, and onboarding? Induction and orientation are more or less the same, and they are very short term. They could be the first day the employee came on board, the things that you do, or the first week that the employee is sitting on the desk for the first time. However, onboarding is a much longer process, which commences even before the employee joins the organization. It could be an email welcoming them to the organization, or include the induction that I've just talked about and the orientation that happens within the first 1 week. The training that the individual may require so that they get to perform the job or well. the getting to meet all the other staff members, all those could be part of onboarding. So onboarding is a process, and it is much longer, and may start before the employee comes on board to maybe 3 months down the line. You may also have somebody asked, how often should managers talk with their staff about performance? And for me, I would say all the time, all the time. But formally, at the beginning of the performance year, whether it is the performance year is same as the financial year, of course, there should be a meeting to set out the goals and the performance goals for the year. I always advise the managers to encourage them to have either fortnightly or weekly check-ins with their staff members. These are one-on-one, informal. How are you doing? How are you getting along? What challenges are you getting? You know, so that I can be help. It can be of help. Of course, depending on how often appraisals are done. Of course, at appraisal time, whether it is quarterly, whether it is biannual, or whether it is annual, that should happen. Somebody also asked between annual and biannual, which is better. Of course, the more times you are able to do appraisals, the better, because you can actually be able to to provide feedback to staff about their own performance, and they can make improvements, and they can also be able to give you feedback either on also how you are performing. In an organization where there is no dedicated HR person, who should handle HR? Well, it's very difficult to tell, but I say human resources or staff or employees are the key. We always say that it's the most important asset within an organization. If we are able to hire finance people, if we are able to hire M&E people, if we are able to hire project people, we should have a human resources person within an organization. Let's budget for it. This is a professional area. It is difficult. It can make or break the organization. Let us invest. Then somebody asked, what is the ratio at which an organization should hire a HR person? The rule of the thumb, if you have 50 staff members, you should have at least a HR officer. If you have at least 100 staff members, at least you should have a human resources manager. So, but we have organizations with even 25 staff members who may hire a HR assistant, and that should be sufficient. Somebody asked, what are the tools that can help in orientation? And some of them, of course, there could be a welcome note signed by the country director or the leader of the organization. You can, of course, the job description is very important because it's also now inducts or introduces this person to their job. Of course, the human resources handbook is also very important because it also provides the do's and don'ts and the culture of the organization. Of course, there are very many other forms that sometimes that come from human resources office, the things that they need to complete. But generally, if they are coming to work in projects, the work plan is also part of the onboarding process, since they need to know the bigger picture of the organization. So some organizations have a training and need assessment done, so that the managers can know how to come in and assist these individuals. Maybe my colleagues can also chime in and answer some of the other questions. Somebody is asking, is 360 degrees appraisal technique relevant for all categories, even for employees who do not have subordinates? Yes, it is possible, and it is relevant. These individuals also have co-workers who can also provide feedback, and other people who could be seniors, not necessarily their supervisors, who can also provide that feedback.
Simon, I just quickly wanted to mention about the presentation that you did as well at the local partner meeting this past year. So we do actually have a link to that recording, and I've put it into the chat for everyone now. It was about ASAP's salary survey and about hiring and retaining staff. So if you are interested in further information about the salary survey, I saw a number of questions in the Q&A about that. You can go ahead and click that link and you'll be able to see that recording as well.
Somebody is asking whether we've done any salary surveys in Cameroon. Yes, we have some data on the salaries, the market salary data in Cameroon. Definitely, that's something we've done. And if you want to access that, I think Susan, if you give them my email address, we can talk further.
Certainly, I'll put that in the chat.
And somebody is also asking whether we can share a comprehensive policy document. Maybe we can share some template that could be helpful. It may not be comprehensive because, of course, each and every country have different components that they require, maybe through statutory requirements that they do maintain. So this could be just a framework, but not a complete one that you can implement. You need to customize it. And somebody is asking, when do you pay severance? For example, if employees work for of an organization, if an employee of an organization is working on a USAID project and are employed by the organization and will continue to do so after the close of the project, do we though owe them severance? First of all, even before I attempt to answer this, it also depends on what are the rules, what is the law in the country, and what does your organization's policies say? Because USAID will go by what your policy says. USAID will go by what the law of the country says. So I will not be able to provide a straight answer there. So that would depend on those two important documents that a USAID will honor in case of closure of a project. Somebody anonymous is asking, partners seek to know how will local organization maintain the salary scale of all staff after closeout, and no additional funding is coming from US or any other donor. That, of course, is very tricky. And organizations here, you need to either, if somebody was working 100% for a particular project and it closes, then it's the decision of the organization whether they need to keep that individual or not, and whether they can afford to sustain that individual without the USAID funding. So I wouldn't be able to answer that question. It depends on whether the organization had reserves, whether the organizations has other projects from which that staff member can be able to can be able to fund, or the projects that can be able to sustain that. The organization may need to make decisions whether to maintain that position or whether to let it go.
Just a quick note to everyone, we're going to go ahead and launch the webinar poll right now. And if you'd like, Simon, I could read you out a couple of the questions if yourself and the
okay,
other presenters
proceed.
Perfect. So I think we haven't asked this one yet. It's the one about severance. So people are wondering, when do you pay severance? By example, if the employees of an organization is working on a USAID project and are employed by the organization and will continue to do so after the closeout of the project.
I think, Susan, I think I've addressed that.
Oh, sorry about that. No worries,
Okay.
we'll move that one over. All right.
Somebody is asking, what is the rule of the thumb when it comes to determining the budget for staff development? Again, for me, I mean, Enoch, you could maybe help me out here. I don't think there is a rule of the thumb in terms of staff development budget, but definitely. I doubt whether it should. I don't think it should be more than 25% of whatever. I think it should be. I think staff development can be part of your either. I mean, in part of your budget, or you can. I don't know whether you can include it in your fringe in your fringe calculations. I guess there are people who are in here in finance who can help us out where you can where it rightly falls. But I think there is no. I've not seen in the development sector. I've not seen the rule of the thumb in terms of budget. And Susan, people are asking that we share the presentations.
Yes, so as a reminder to everyone that we will go ahead and share the recording of this presentation as well as a PDF of the presentation slides tomorrow morning. I'll make sure I put that link once again in the chat, and I will hope to get it online today, but if not, it'll be there by tomorrow morning and you'll be able to rewatch the webinar then. Perfect. And just a reminder to everyone as well that you can all actually view the Q&A box. So there's been a ton of questions coming in. I think we've had close to 30, and the team has been answering them by typing in their answers throughout the webinar. So I've set it up so that you can go in and actually view the questions, both the open questions and the answered questions, and you can see the team's responses and some of their answers there. So feel free to add any more if you'd like. Let's see if we have a few extra ones. So people are wondering about like succession plans and those types of templates. So what we can do as well is include some of that on the page that we'll share tomorrow with the recording. So Simon, if you want to send me any links to any templates or anything that you'd like us to be sharing, we can be sure to add that to the page as well. Perfect. And for our other presenters, were there any questions that you'd like to address? Sometimes it's easier, I know, to say it rather than just to type it. So if there's any that you'd like to expand on for a little further, feel free to come off of mute and go ahead and answer those.
I think I will just chime into what Simon has said about the salary structure. For us, what we did and what I think is good to do is to look at a salary survey and look at as an organizational structure for your organization, and then do it as an organization-wide exercise, not specifically for a project, because projects come and go, but the organization remains. So if you have done the exercise for your organization, then you're able to keep to that. And positions might go because certain positions were fully funded by projects, but the organization will remain and you're able to keep the structure. Thank you.
Excellent. And I think I saw a question here. Can we get a copy of the Q&A transcript as well? So that's actually a great idea because I think there was a ton of really good answers here from our team. So we'll make sure that that gets added to the resource page that the recording will be on tomorrow.
Somebody has asked whether for a newly employed staff for the first 60 days of employment or probationary period, do that need performance evaluation? My answer is yes. It is important that even at the beginning of that period that you set what are the performance expectations, and when those are met, I mean, through an evaluation, you can put in record that these ones have been met. Where they have not been met, and therefore you either need to let the staff go or need to extend that period, then you have a very good basis on why or what aspects of the job has not been met. So that is a very key and important activity in performance management.
Excellent. It looks like there is a question here about, is there a group or network of HR practitioners in the USAID Pepfar space?
I'm aware of a group of practitioners operating in different countries, but not at a global level where at the Pepfar environment. But if there is any, I would also be glad to join. But I know there are various HR roundtables in different countries where professionals in HR in development world sometimes they share ideas and express and exchange information.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I think that is about all of the questions. Again, for everyone, you can actually pop open the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and you can see that the team has been answering questions through typing in their answers throughout the webinar. So you'll be able to read through those and see some of the answers. And we'll make sure that this Q&A document is also available on the webpage tomorrow. I've put the link to where it will be housed in the chat, so you can go ahead and click that tomorrow. And we'll also send it out with the newsletter that we send out each Monday. And there's also several upcoming webinars. So as a reminder, we have one every week throughout March. And so if you go ahead, I've put that in the chat as well, the link to that. You can go ahead and see a couple of the upcoming ones we have, and you can actually register ahead of time and also see all of the past recorded ones. So let's see if we have any new ones. So anything else that you'd like to add, Simon or the team?
From me is just to again reiterate that people are the greatest assets in every organization. They'll determine the success of projects. They will contribute to the success or failure of projects. So, unfortunately, human staff have feelings. They have, unlike projects and like money, and they have feelings, and therefore, when you treat them well, they definitely respond. And so my role here is to urge all of us to embrace good HR practices. Remember that we are creating a formidable culture within organizations, and performance will, if you address human issues, performance issues will be less. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day and evening.
Wonderful, and thank you so much. I just wanted to once again thank the team. And thank you all so much for the presentation. We had a ton of really great questions here. And so this gives us definitely some ideas, I think, for future webinars. There is a question in the chat that's just popped up about onboarding tools for organizations. So we could answer that now, but also that gives me an idea. Maybe, Simon, we need to do a webinar that's really focused on that. How are you onboarding and bringing people on? Because as you mentioned, it is really important for sustaining staff, but also obviously the first introduction to them. So did you want to answer that now? Oh, I think you're muted.
Susan, I could share maybe a checklist of some of the things that we could staff. Could be included in an onboarding process. Which can form part of the pack that we'll be sharing with staff tomorrow.
Perfect. That sounds great. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for participating today. We'll be sure to send out a link to the recording. It'll be available tomorrow morning, and we'll also put it in our newsletter that'll go out this coming Monday. Thank you everyone for participating and for coming to our webinar today. And of course, thanks to Pepfar and USAID for funding the ASAP project and for all of our projects that we're working on. We greatly appreciate it, and we hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.